Thank you for joining us today. My name is Gina Mueller, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Facebook Topic Data Meets the Power of Insightpool. Before I hand over the reins to our special guests and presenters, I'd like to go over just some logistical items. On your right-hand side of your screen is the GoToWebinar control panel. There you can ask questions, chat with other members. So I encourage you to we'll be taking questions at the end of today's webinar. So please just type in your questions there. Or I encourage you to go ahead and use our Twitter hashtag topic data, to ask questions there, or also just to share your findings and favorite quotes from today's webinar. We will be recording today's webinar, so if for some reason you have to leave early, or if you want to share it with another coworker, we'll be following up with an email tomorrow, including the recording and the slides on SlideShare. So I would like to now introduce you all to Devon and hand over the reins to him.
Thanks, Gina. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're pretty excited about this because I think this is one of the first times we publicly deep dove into what really does Facebook topic data actually mean, and how is it different than what I already get from Facebook, or how is it different than companies out there that already give me Facebook analytics? And it is very clear that this is the first time ever that Facebook has given this level of granularity while still taking a privacy first approach. But it is groundbreaking. It is nothing less than that, and it's not something that's just something similar to what somebody may already be using from an analytics perspective. It's literally completely new, and we want to show you what that actually means. So with me today is somebody that I'm super excited to introduce because he has a far better accent on the phone today, and you'll probably enthralled listening to him than me. But it's Tim Barker, who's the Chief Product Officer at Sift. And Tim was previously the VP of Marketing at Salesforce, and then he had founded 3 successful companies. And again, he is British. I'll make note that he is British, so you will enjoy listening to him. And so if you would, please feel free to join along. I think there's some questions, and there's a hashtag called hashtag topic data. And if you use that hashtag, we'll monitor that, or you can tweet at Insightpool directly, and we'll also answer the questions that way too. So without further ado, I want to just move forward, and Tim, I'd love if you and mine take a second, introduce yourself, and let's dive in.
Wonderful. Well, you've set a high bar there for me to jump over there, so I'll do my best, stiff upper lip British accent for you all. So yeah, I'm Tim Barker, Chief Product Officer at Sift, and as Devon said, this is a really exciting time for any marketer that is using social media data to give them insights to drive campaigns, content, creative, or really just to help drive strategic marketing decisions. So for the first time, in partnership with Facebook, Sift has been working to enable companies to gain insight from the entirety of every Facebook post, comment, and like, but importantly, as Devon said, in a privacy-safe way. So by the rule book, the definition of topic data is on the screen here. And you'll see us refer to something that says anonymous and aggregate. That means that your private data, your personal data stays private, but as a marketer, you can gain audience-level insights at an unprecedented scale. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So let's just sort of pause, though, for a moment to reflect on why is this market changing? Why is this groundbreaking? And simply, it's because Facebook, because of the nature of Facebook's service, it has been hard for companies to do analysis of. A lot of their data, a lot of the engagement that takes place on Facebook does not take place on the public internet. And so they're undeniably the 1.49 billion people on Facebook really dwarf any other social network on the planet in terms of scale of engagement. On average, people spend 46 minutes every day on a Facebook property. And of course, with that, and increasingly, marketers are investing and doubling down on Facebook, not only 2 million plus advertisers, but also advertising revenue growing 43% year on year. So clearly, as audiences engage globally across Facebook, you as a marketer want to be able to gain insight from that to help you craft and create campaigns and content. And so what this means for all of us that are really in this industry is that topic data opens up new interfaces, new APIs, as we call it, as developers, so that you can analyze not just your engagement on your Facebook page, which you can do today and maybe doing to provide customer service or really use it to promote your own content. Well, this is about stepping back from just your own Facebook page or the 50 million plus Facebook pages that brands and small businesses run. This is about looking at analyzing data across all of Facebook. So imagine that if you had the analytical capability to understand what is driving purchase decisions for your product by simply analyzing the sentiment perhaps across all of Facebook about your brand, or the ability to really understand what content is going viral because people are simply sharing it and they're not sharing it perhaps off of your own Facebook page. So this level of capability has never been possible before. And really, I think it's a testament to Facebook's view that if they can help marketers gain better insights into audiences on Facebook, you're going to become better marketers, because that data-driven approach is going to allow you to determine what content works, with which audiences, and really use Facebook as a way to really progress yourself as a data-driven marketer. So let's talk a little bit more into the weeds on what is in this data set that we'll be looking at later in the webinar. So this data set contains both the full set of content and engagement that takes place across Facebook. So that means the text from posts that is anonymized is available for analysis. The engagement on those is also available for analysis. So every like on every post, every share, the comment, and all of this data is also enriched for analysis purposes with details like demographics about the audience, which we'll talk more about in a moment, detail about what topics are present in that text. If it's talking about the NBA or it's talking about NFL, detecting those as topics so to simplify your analysis. And then also things like sentiment. So around your brand, you can start to get a sense of what audiences are engaging with and what they're positive on and what they're negative on. So a couple of things that are really just to double drill down on those that really help kind of simplify the analysis of this are two things. One is the topics themselves, which you're going to see in a few screenshots later on, and the other one is the demographics. These are essentially new ways to give you new ways to analyze topic data and simplify how you could do that. So if you're familiar with the way Facebook works, there is a thing called the open graph. Everything on the planet, more or less, is represented inside Facebook. There's a page for your brand. There is, a page for your product or for your industry. And so all of this detail really allows the algorithms to really determine, when processing text from Facebook, determine what the topics of those are about. And the reason this is super cool is it really makes it easy for you to work with this unprecedented volume of data. So if you want to do analysis and look across every piece of content about any movie or any content around a movie called The Interview, which might be quite noisy, things like Facebook topics really simplify that and make that easy to work with. And the reason why that's important is, as we all know, if you're doing analysis of social media data, you want to make sure you're analyzing it and analyzing the right data. So this really both simplifies how you can analyze the data and as well as kind of make sure you're getting the right data. The other part of this, which is really, I know for many marketers, there's been a frustration since the birth of the social media analytics market, is demographics. So essentially, it's very hard when looking at other social media data to even understand what country someone is in, let alone what their kind of age range or gender might be. And so because we populate Facebook with this data, Facebook can make this available in an aggregate and again, anonymized form. So there is zero way to trace any of that data back to individuals. So demographics data really unlocks a whole new set of ways that you can analyze social media data, because you can start to understand how different audiences are responding to your content or your campaigns. So perhaps it might give you an indicator to determine that, there is a 25 to 34-year-old males in California really love this campaign, but 45 to 54-year-old females in New York, maybe not so much. It's been extremely hard up to now to be able to do that type of audience segmentation with other social networks because the data simply wasn't there. And as part of making this data available, it's going to provide you with new ways to not only analyze this unprecedented volume of data that's coming out of Facebook every day, but also to allow you to gain a deeper insight into the audiences themselves that are engaging. Now, all of this has to be done in a way that respects the privacy of us, users of Facebook ourselves. And so there are controls in place to ensure that you can do analysis, so you can analyze and look for any content or posts that contain mentions of your brand, mentions of, hashtags, sharing of links, whatever it might be, but the output of this makes its way to you as analytics, which means that you're not looking at raw posts, of which there are many million every minute, but you're seeing statistics, results, and ultimately those results are built from the underlying data. So that means each post, comment, and like rolls up to build you that analytical view. And that's great because it means that you can ask any question of the data and it will summarize and give you a statistical result as part of that. So I'm not going to drill down on each one of the data management controls, but clearly we all take privacy as a super important topic. So this is really controls to ensure that you can analyze audiences, but not individuals. And I guess in terms of how we're seeing this being applied, if you step back and think about how social media data has historically been used, it's often been used to really monitor the heartbeat of a brand, perhaps, or to understand what content is trending or popular across a network. One interesting use case at this, we're already seeing this starting to open up, is to use it for bigger research. What I mean here is brand or marketing research. And the reason why is pretty simple. There's kind of four parts to it. The first one is just the representative nature of Facebook. It's got a representative set of demographics. It has got a global reach. There are nearly 1.5 billion people on Facebook. And as you may have seen a short time ago, they reached a milestone of 1 billion people in a single day. So the scale of it across all demographics is just unparalleled. It also, because of the nature of it, excludes self-promotion bias, because you're not looking at content that people are posting and promoting publicly. So you get a more authentic view of what audiences are engaging in. It also contains demographics, which means that you can start to segment and understand those audiences in a way that your brand probably tries to understand audiences today. You're really trying to break that data set down by geo. You're trying to break it down by gender or age range, so that you can start to understand how different audiences are responding. And also, it provides data in a very structured way to help you get the most out of it in a really simple way. So the underlying text of those posts and comments can be analyzed, but in a way that you're looking at statistical summary results. You're looking at line graphs, top tens, that kind of thing, not thousands and thousands of raw posts to try and figure out what's going on. So how this works with Insightpool is really in the way of a pipeline where we can plug into the real-time newsfeed that takes place across Facebook, where the many millions of posts, comments, and likes are taking place every minute, and then process that in a way that ultimately ends in you gaining an insight into your audience, your content, your brand. And that pipeline is what we've worked closely with Insightpool on integrating, so that you can focus your analysis down to the things that matter to you, and use that to gain insights to drive an advantage for your brand, whether that be analyzing and understanding public sentiment about your product, or whether that be around understanding what content is generating engagement in a given industry to drive your content marketing efforts, or to expand beyond your own Facebook page to really understand the content and engagement around content you create. So all of these things create a huge, unparalleled amount of opportunity. And just to sort of bookend it to Devon's comment, this has never been available or possible before. This is about complements existing Facebook APIs in the market, things that you've probably used inside Facebook themselves. But this is a truly unique and game-changing way that companies can gain insight into the world's most important social network. So with that, Devon, I'm going to hand it back to you to kind of go into the weeds and really show what this can do.
Yeah, no, Tim, thanks. That's really helpful. And I think one of the biggest things is that when you work with a platform partner that obviously has created it in such a manner that we can easily digest it, it's I almost kind of think of it, since everybody kind of asked this, is right. So Facebook is the raw materials. Data Sift is almost like the manufacturer. And then Insightpool is the end retailer. So, for being able to acquire this data in digestible chunks and being able to make sense of it and so forth, we're the end retailer, but it's great to work with a partner that we have such a tight supply chain all across it. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about is that, really when you think about what Insightpool does at its core is it's where we kind of have a saying called science drives sales. And in the middle of this flywheel, data science really lives to sit there and try and make sense of analytics to turn them into insights. And almost everybody nowadays is literally like, I don't need another analytics platform. I am drowning in analytics. What I need is insights. I need somebody to tell me what to do. And this is where the beautiful part about us working with Data Sift and Facebook comes in, is that that's where we are evolved. That's where we can literally think of it literally like the end retailer. Oh, here's your size, or here's what it looks like in this light, or here's this mirror, check it out. Like all these different ways of kind of summarizing it into an easy to understand fashion. This is where Insightpool comes in. And so as we think about, how we actually make sense of it, I thought I'd just tell a story. And honestly, this is where you're probably going to be able to get ideas for what you decide to do with this type of data, because the use cases are limitless, and that's sometimes a problem because you think of 500 things instead of thinking of the one or two things that are most important. So I'll tell you the story. We have a customer, it's a very large auto parts retailer, and they were saying, look, we're trying to figure out a way to connect with NASCAR fans, right? That obviously makes sense. We want to be in that conversation. We want to know what makes them tick. How can we spark engagement around the top people, et cetera? So previously, it used to be that, hey, you would come up with great ideas. Our accounts team would work with theirs and say, hey, maybe we should really, target fans of this particular driver or this particular race, and we should get them encouraged around a particular subject, et cetera. Well, with Facebook now living as a foundation, there's not a lot of, you don't have to necessarily rely upon the really awesome human intelligence that you may have with your agency or your internal team or partners like ours. You can tap Pylon and Facebook data with Insightpool to be able to say, like, what is going on enough to inform you to what I should actually do? And so in this particular case, we've been able to figure out stuff like when you access Pylon, you have to send it signals. So you can't just say, hey, I want to know, everything with X. Now you could, it just might blow up your filters such that you get a lot of data and that you don't want to specifically analyze that much. So we set up filters like NHRA, motocross, drag racing, NASCAR. These are topics and points that people are talking about. You can also disinclude things like, hey, if somebody's an actual race driver, you didn't necessarily want that. And so it creates filters. So think of them literally like filters to be able to analyze the data that's happening. And so when we did this, you can analyze, all different types of volume points. And I'm just going to tell you the story about how we analyzed one, but now you'd be able to get all of this information that I'm about to go through when you decide to analyze anything. It doesn't have to be this peak that we're seeing because that may be irrelevant. Maybe you want to figure out, like, well, what's causing the lull and how do I dig into that? But in this particular case, we saw, hey, there's a peak in conversation going on. What's happening? And when you dig into this, you can specifically see that here are all of the different things that you can uncover. And, I'll let Tim comment on a little bit, but like, this is an amazing amount of data. Like, where are the links coming from that are being shared? Tell me about the demo of the people talking about it. Are they saying great things, bad things? We've seen sentiment, but like, Tim, maybe if you wouldn't mind commenting for a second on what are some of the differences that people can get now with this level of data as opposed to what they may have previously gotten with other analytics tools? That this is obviously sentiment is not necessarily one of those, but could you comment a little bit on like, hey, how this is unprecedented with respect to the exact specifics? Tim, are you there or are you on mute? Hopefully we haven't lost him, but I'll keep going. The big thing is really understand what is making people move. And so when we go through the story a little bit, you'll see that there's positive, negative sentiment that you can get out of it, but to a level of depth that has been, again, previously unprecedented. So if you sit there and say like, well, here's the sentiment of my overall filter, how do I drill down into specifically what's happening with the negative sentiment? Instead of just saying it's positive, negative, where is that exactly coming from? What are the top things that are negative and why? And so as we're continuing to drill down, we can see where's the region of where people are posting this from. So think of this for a second, where you're actually going to do your media buys, even if you're going to do television buys. Facebook topic data is literally data truth. And as Tim mentioned before, 1 billion people logged in 1 day. I mean, 3 times the size of the entire United States, 1 billion people in 1 day, and 1.5 billion that consistently log in at 46 minutes a day. The most brilliant part of this is the simple fact that it is unfiltered. So when you think about all of the different activities that happen across different social networks, so say, for example, Twitter, you are what you tweet. And the most brilliant part about Twitter is it's not anonymized because people don't want it to be. They want you to understand what they're saying and doing, down to the individual. Well, there are certain things when you'll take certain actions when you are connecting from an interest graph perspective. So think of Twitter as having your own microphone, and the activities that you may do may be at some point slightly guarded. Obviously, not necessarily from some of the slip-ups we've seen with celebrities, et cetera. However, for the most part, you think about it slightly before you tweet it. In Facebook, you're actually just doing a natural extension of your own human interactions. You're communicating with your social graph and not just on Twitter where it's largely an interest graph. So the level of guard that you have up around anything is really not there. So it's unfiltered. And that's the beautiful part about it because people are just connecting in the most sincere and authentic way. And so understanding where that activity is coming from is great because you can plan your buy around that. So one of the real key elements of this that is in particular interest is, where is the traffic coming from? What's that traffic about? Who's sharing it? What's happening with that? So in this particular case, this auto parts retailer was able to figure out that, as you can see on the left, that a lot of this traffic was coming from Fox Sports. And when you drill down into it, it was actually traffic around a story that was pretty tragic, that it was a tribute to a driver that had actually passed away. And he was an IndyCar racer. So when you think about that, this is probably not the right time for, if you're trying to connect with your audience, to be incredibly self-promotional. It's probably the right time to be empathetic. It may be even the right time for you to create a tribute and for you to be able to join into that conversation by doing it in the most appropriate manner. And when I think about Facebook, I can't think of, a place that is more simply an extension of us as humans than Facebook. It's a simple extension of humanity, the actions that we do, the people that we're connected to, what we go through, whether it's wishing somebody a happy birthday, to being able to comment on somebody getting married. All of these moments are unfiltered extensions of our human behavior. And if a brand is trying to take advantage of being able to become part of that, you need to know what's driving that human behavior. So if all of a sudden you decided to slap up a bunch of, advertisements or advertisements, as Tim would say, you probably would be doing that and getting a negative reaction. So how can this data inform you on how to connect with your audience around the core of what's making them move? And so if you think about that, and you think about a lot of this traffic also coming from a single destination of Fox Sports, there's probably something you should do with Fox Sports. Maybe if you decide to do anything that's not invasive and you're placing buys, you should probably think about doing that on Fox Sports, because that's the audience that is making the needle move for what you are trying to do as a brand to connect with the people in the demographic and in that characteristic of what you're looking for. So it's really an interesting story to dive deep, and this is where Insightpool starts separating itself. This is not a play where you get analytics. This is a play where you get insights. You don't need more analytics. Now, for the first time ever, this type of data is available. And we'll go through all the specifics of again, even private posts, but by virtue of them being anonymous and so forth, we can have access to a lot more than has ever been available. I think, largely most of the analytics surrounding Facebook is around that 5% of public post and public engagement. 95% of that is hidden. And so when this happens, and when it's done in an aggregated, anonymized way so that privacy is held first, you get the epitome of the world's best ever focus group, because it's unfiltered. And it's not public. It's what they're sharing. It's what's making them move. And it can inform you of how to actually make what you do tick. So when you think about hidden insights, this is where we really shine. This is where we have not only the technology, but we also have specialists and people that are actually making sense of the data for customers to help them decide what they need to do, not just with their other suite of word-of-mouth platform products, but also things that they spend a lot of money on: TV ads, banner ads, creative, right? So all of a sudden you spend $1 million a year with your agency. Are they coming up with the ideas, or can you tell them what ideas to come up with because of the data that you now have understood? It's a real way, because with data truth, to be able to hold all vendors, including companies like ourselves, to toe, because you can actually say, hey, I know this is happening, generate something for me around this, because I know this is what will make us move, as opposed to spending countless hours and efforts and dollars on things that honestly you take a shot at and it misses the target. So, our ability at Insightpool, combined with Facebook and Sift, is to be able to hit the target right the first time. And if you can hit the target right the first time, it's amazing how much you can save, relative to research and dollars associated with that, but then how much you can make. Because as you know, in social, and as Tim has mentioned, you can't keep the data for more than 30 days. And particularly with real-time moments and things of that nature that happen, by the time you decide to do something, it could be too late. And in this particular case is a good example. It's an opportunity to connect with that audience and to be empathetic towards what's happening. And by the way, it was actually a different audience. That was an Indy driver that had actually passed, as opposed to a NASCAR driver. And so it's NASCAR outpouring their support for an Indy car, which is technically a competitive sport. Well, how interesting is it to know that level of insight? How interesting is it to really understand, well, that's what's making my audience move, and there's no way you could have possibly predicted that. So this just gives you another reemphasis of Facebook is the foundation. If you literally have unfiltered data, you can do so much. And Insightpool literally is a way for you to take this unfiltered data and put it to use in terms of insights and not just more analytics. So I think we have some time for some questions. And Gina, I don't know if you'd like to maybe kick this off, because I know we've got some questions that have been coming in, and we'd love to be able to answer them directly. And I don't know, Tim, do we have you back on the line, or hopefully you're not still on mute?
I'm on the line. Sorry, I was on mute earlier.
No worries, no worries. And Tim, maybe just to pop this question, I don't know if that it is, but Tim, just the one that we'd asked earlier where we thought we lost you for a second. The specifics around why this is the first time and why this is very different than all the other analytics that you typically got from Facebook in years past. Like, would you mind sounding off a few specifics, again, from y'all's side, since you work so closely with them, on what's different about this versus anything else of, analytics tools that you could buy out there on the market prior?
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, so historically, Facebook's provided a number of different interfaces that developers can use for different types of analysis. So historically, when any company that wanted to do, let's say, the more sort of ad hoc sort of text-based analysis to really understand posts and activity around those, they were really limited to trying to search for public posts. And there were a number of challenges with that. One of them simply just being that public posts really represent a tiny fraction of activity across Facebook. And so what you'd end up with on any dashboard that you'd ever see was Facebook would be a fraction of the total amount of content, which all of us would look at and go, that just doesn't seem right. The reality is that anything that, when in our own kind of analysis, when you're working with topic data, to give you a good analogy here, benchmarking that we've done where we bring every other data source that's available. So that includes, Twitter, Tumblr, blogs, the kind of the fully visible, public social data sources. Then when we turn on topic data to really look for the same kind of brand terms within that, it's 6 times bigger than everything else combined. So essentially, historically, challenge has been that there were a number of restricted APIs and restricted ways to do analysis, which didn't give you a representative view across all of Facebook. This is the first time that Facebook have brought to market the technology working with us to allow you to do analysis in a privacy-safe way across all of Facebook. So as marketers, you want to go to where the audiences are. And with 1.5 billion people on Facebook, no doubt that's where the audience is.
Awesome. So that's super helpful, and I think makes a very large clarifying statement. This is not, for lack of a better term, this is not your grandfather's Facebook. This is completely new, and the ability that it has to do things is far and away something that has never, ever, ever been released before. So I think let's take some questions, Gina.
Yeah, so one of the first questions that was asked is a specific around how the data actually works. Do I access this data per month, per campaign, per year, or how exactly does it work?
Sure, so maybe I'll take that if that makes sense, because I know we're the retailer here. So basically, the data works, typically it's a normal SaaS platform. So we analyze based upon, for instance, if somebody says, hey, I just want to analyze the word work, right? So that is a very broad one that is literally, or the word politics or something of that nature, that if somebody just wanted to know all of that data, then they would buy a fairly large package, and then we would sell it in a way that they can do it in, again, what's known as a SaaS agreement, where it might be 6 months or a year or whatever it might be. If somebody, literally wanted to just understand, like, what's happening with my audience, and they can get specific, that's where the more granular you can get, the less amount of data is necessarily out there, so the less dollars amount it actually costs. And again, similar SaaS agreements. So that's just an answer to that one.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And then we had 2 questions coming in around what's my marketing team not doing today that they need to be doing with this data. So, what is, and then the other one, questions more a little bit more specific on like what piece of data is the most valuable that I'll find in here. And I'm sure that's going to be a little bit different from each marketer, but if you could.
Yeah, totally. So I think Tim and I probably have probably similar perspectives, but I'd love to get us both. I think like what most valuable piece of data I can think of is literally like a hidden insight. When you think of, take the example with that auto parts retailer finding out like, wait, if you're trying to connect with NASCAR, you should actually talk about Indy cars. Like, wait, that's weird. If you're trying to connect with basketball fans at this moment, you should actually talk about baseball. Huh, weird. Hidden insights, huge. And then, figuring out those traffic sources is another really big one that actually drives that. So Tim, maybe, I don't know if you have some commentary around this, like what you found is some of the examples of the best use cases of where people have
definitely. Yeah. I mean, of course, people are using Facebook topic data alongside the more well-established use cases for social, so that might simply be using it to analyze brand reputation. All of those ones you'll be familiar with already. But I would say that what we are seeing Facebook uniquely positioned to provide is insights that drive what I might think of as upstream marketing. So not things that are just about audience, finding an audience, reach an audience, but things further upstream. Think of it as to where you and your team spend a lot of time is, let's say, content marketing, spending a lot of time trying to create content that's going to generate engagement and educate and interest with an audience, or you're working on a campaign to really determine what the creative is that you should use there. All of these things have traditionally been perhaps gut feel or research driven using sort of traditional research models, which are slow and take a very small sample. What we're seeing a lot of people do is to apply topic data to those kinds of problems and use that also in a way that allows you to be more agile. So here's a practical example. If you wanted to, and this kind of really talks to the points that Devon's talking about, the insights around what content is resonating with each audience, you might use it this way. And in fact, this is a way that one of our customers did use this. They wanted to launch a campaign for people that loved country music. And so from that, they could use topic data to really segment which artists resonate most with different audiences. So breaking down geo and gender and age range. From that, they could then identify that there were 12 different sort of segments of audiences that all had different tastes and interests. So with that, they could create 12 different campaigns, each featuring a different artist, and distribute that content through Facebook, both organically, but also through paid. So I think the ability for you to use research to drive insights into what is probably a very expensive process for most marketers, which is content and campaign creation, to go from the Don Draper gut feel to a data-driven one is going to mean that the content and campaigns we create are a lot more effective, which means that they resonate with audiences and generate more engagement. So that'd be an area that we're definitely seeing a huge amount of uptake on.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. So that's a good point. Gina, what's the next one?
This much data can be overwhelming. What is my marketing team not doing today that they need to be doing with this data? And then there's a second part to this question asking if there's consultants to like advise on best practices and what their strategy should be.
Yeah, look, I think that this tidal wave of marketing technologies and big data is literally that. It's a tidal wave that either you've got to figure out how to get a awesome surfboard and take some surfing lessons, or you're going to get crushed by it. What's interesting is that they talk about we're in the decade of the CMO. An unprecedented 10x increase in marketing spend in 10 years. So from 12 billion to 120 billion. But you know how many companies now are on that marketing landscape now? It's something like 1,800. And there's probably 5 more companies that have come up with something maybe close and similar from a technology perspective since the time we've had this webinar. So the point is that it is daunting, and I feel sorry for people that we actually sell to and that are customers, because you got to try and figure out what the heck to do with all this. I think the number one thing is that you really need to have a guide, right? So if you're talking to somebody, you need to understand, tell me, here's my 2 biggest issues right now. Don't have an explanation around like, here's what all this can do. It could do this. It could do that. It can make my dog learn how to dance. It could do all these different things. The point simply is when you're having a conversation with any vendor talking about data and so forth, tell them your 2 biggest priorities right now, and then tell them to come back with the specific storyline, an example of how that data will help those 2 biggest priorities. That is when you cut through a lot. And if that doesn't serve your 2 biggest priorities, it's not saying that it may not serve priorities that you may later have. It will articulate and crystallize, oh, well, my 2 biggest priorities are that I feel like, here's an example. I was with a consumer products company, and they were trying to move their audience from being kind of more of a juvenile product to more of something that an older demographic could use because the margins would be higher there. Well, who are those people, and how could that? Because I have no idea, because I've only largely sold to the middle schoolers of the world. And so give them a specific 1 or 2 stories that are hot priorities. Let them come back to you and tell you a story of how that technology applies to that. Otherwise, it's not the right fit for you at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And I just have one last question that's come in. So if you guys have any last questions, please submit those to the questions tab and go to webinar now. The last question is, what do you suggest as the next steps for a brand to actually get started using Facebook topic data?
Yeah, so maybe I'll turn it over to Tim on that one. Tim, do you want to take first stab at kind of what they would do to get started?
Mm-hmm.
For sure. First thing they're going to do is call you, isn't it? I guess that was the
See,
first
if I
thing to
said
do.
that, it would sound self-promotional. So you said it sounds okay.
Exactly. Well, I think Insightpool's the place to start for that. And I sort of seriously, though, I think there is clearly this is an opportunity to sort of pause for thought. And as you'd mentioned, Devon, think about some of the opportunities you've not been able to follow before, or think about when you've built some insights and take it up to leadership team, and they go, who is this audience that's kind of giving you this signal? I think to some degree there are. This is rocket fuel for the use cases you currently do. Pour in insights from 1.5 billion people into everything you're currently gaining insight from is going to give you a much broader, stronger set of signals coming out from that. But also evaluate what use cases the voice of the customer, the voice of the market could add to what you're currently doing in marketing. And like all things, and like the role of the CMO right now is to be the chief experimentation officer. Like there's a whole number of opportunities out there. So set some metrics, define what success would look like, and then work your way through a number of different use cases and examples to see what can really give you the best return. And the great thing about partnership with Insightpool is they've really focused on making this not just consumable, but digesting this down from the volumes of masses of data into the insight. And ultimately, marketers want outcomes, not data. And so to be able to do that translation is really, the art of how you can help drive marketing.
Yep. Well, I wish I could have said it better myself. So yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Is that I think the theme of this is nobody needs any more analytics. They need more insights. And even the people that you may have internally can be helpful, but the real reality is give people a couple your hottest priorities and then watch them come back, and you'll then be able to understand how it crystallizes to what you need to do now. And I think that's the only way to approach it. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate you joining today. Gene, I don't know if we had some last-minute announcements or we're good to go.
No other questions trickled in. The only announcement is the recording will be sent out to you all, hopefully tomorrow.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Look forward to it. Take care.